Welcome back to episode 55 of the Grappling Growth podcast with me, Joe Testori. On today's episode, I was joined by the owner of one of Australia's fastest growing businesses, Steve Pastor. He is the founder of Kings of Neon and a very cool AI program which he's building out called Designer AI, which we speak about on the podcast. This podcast is one from a guy who I've been following for probably about 3 or so years. And I've watched him on LinkedIn go from strength to strength. He is being a servant leader. He is someone who is trying to really inspire not only his kids, his family, but his organization through his actions. He doesn't believe in preaching. Steve is very raw, uncut, and what you see is what you get from him. On this podcast, we talk about him sinking over $700,000 into this new AI business, how he's been able to scale his business in the US to over $250,000 per month in revenue, how he spent a month in Texas and realized actually maybe it'd be good for him and his wife, but because he's got kids, it isn't so good for him. As I said, what I like about Steve is just how raw and honest he is, and he holds nothing back. He talks about being a grown man and crying in the shower because his business has been so fucked at points. So if you're someone who is being futuristic about your business, wants to understand the real challenges that you might be going through in running a business, then I recommend this podcast for you. Thanks for taking the time to listen. If you enjoyed this, share it with your friend. Take care.
As entrepreneurs, we all experience challenges in our business journey. I'm Joe Testori, and the Grappling Growth podcast is my attempt at documenting my entrepreneurial journey while building my brands. I sit down with fellow entrepreneurs, understanding how they grapple with growth. I hope you find value and enjoy.
Steve, how you doing? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm doing really well. Thank you, Joe. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Steve, I'm curious, what does growth look like to you?
Growth to me, probably initially when I was starting out the business, was make as much humanly as possible in the ways of money. So that was growth. I just wanted to solve a problem, which was cash, especially in the household. But now it's more about who I am becoming as a person, finding myself more true self, and working on sort of mental, physical fitness and being a better dad, things like that as well. So it's probably a little bit more diverse when I say growth these days than it was sort of 5 years ago.
Okay, well, you answered my question there. So you spoke about moving away from being very financially driven, money driven, talking about numbers, to more of a dynamic approach. And it kind of happened in the last 5 years. Was there a moment in time for you where the penny dropped and everything transitioned away, or do you think it was a gradual process?
Yeah, there was it definitely is gradual because you find new versions of yourself throughout the journey, and you have to create and, almost reincarnate yourself as you go through these sort of growth barriers. But probably the moment that clicked for me was probably around 6-9 months into the journey of Kings of Neon. And essentially what happened is I'd been running this. The results were like really cool, or, for the sake of where we're at, we were doing 50 grand a month, and for a new, e-com owner that's never had an e-com store, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I can do, over $500,000 a year. And I got my BAS. So in Australia, BAS is like a tax bill. So it's like, you have to pay obviously like employment costs and like GST, so goods and services tax. And once I'd paid off my BAS, I had like $1,000 left in my bank, and I wasn't paying myself at the time. And I was like in a cold sweat. I've been working my ass off. And I just got into this big mental head spin and got really quite anxious about everything that I was doing, and questioned everything that I was doing. And I wasn't really looking after my health and fitness, and it was in a big spiral. And, I found myself like literally in the shower for like over an hour, just worrying about absolutely everything. And I was at the gym one day because I was trying to invigorate and trying to move, and I was listening to Andy Frisella. And
I thought you were going to come to this.
Yeah. I was listening to Andy Frisella at the time, and for someone that doesn't necessarily have mentors in my personal life, I can't go across and I don't have an uncle that was really successful, or I don't have a friend that was an entrepreneur, or I don't have those examples in my life that I can sort of gain knowledge from. Andy Frisella was my mentor in that time, and admittedly, he wasn't talking directly to me, but it felt like he was talking directly to me. And it just hit deep, and he said, "Stop being a bitch, get off your ass and do." And it was probably the moment where I was like, "Oh, you don't mind if I swear, do you?" Right? I was like, "Oh fuck!" Like I am accountable for absolutely everything that I'm doing. All the results are actually, the derivative of me. So if I'm not willing to change and I'm not willing to push myself, then ultimately, I can't accept success. So it was a bit of a realization, and then that started that journey there. And obviously, a bunch of realizations as you go through the process, but that was probably the key moment. And I got out of the gym, and he was talking about cold showers at the time, and I snapped on my first cold shower. I was like, let's go. So,
And when was this?
This was probably, about 4.5 years ago, I'd say.
What's crazy? So I assume that means you started 75 hard immediately.
Yeah, immediately. That was like next day.
I'll tell you, I've got a very, very similar story and timeline arc as to you. So I quit my job in 2019. I pretty much bummed around for the rest of that year. I was working on the business. I wasn't taking it seriously. And I remember 25th birthday, 21st of February, so like in like 10 days time. But I remember saying to myself, to hit 25, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to make all these changes. And I fucking woke up hungover. And I remember just being embarrassed. And I was like, it was a Friday, I think it was. And I was like, it's fine, I'll start on Monday. And I didn't start on Monday. And I just remember looking at myself just for a period of time, just being like, what are you doing? You're a bum. And then I discovered 75 Hard in probably about a month after that. I said I'm going to start it, and I didn't. But there was a moment, it was September 2020, 2020. Can't remember the date exactly. But Sunday evening, I ended up going to the pub, had a few drinks, and then I got some KFC. Ate this KFC, felt like an absolute pig. And there was so much chicken left over for the next day. And I looked at it and I was like, I'm not eating this. And I just turned to my partner at the time and just said, I'm starting 75 hard today. She's like, yeah, come on. I was like, no, I'm telling you, this is it. And I feel 2020 for me was such a transformative year. But that moment in particular, starting 75 hard, I just found that I have found myself to find a new gear. And for me, I was talking to a friend about it yesterday, but whenever I feel really off compass in life, I'll just do the phases. So I'll do 75 hard phase 1, 2, whatever. And just that's my course reset. So can you just talk to me about your experience with 75 hard initially? How did you feel that journey went for you? And I'm sure that's a period that you can look back to with great strength and fondness.
Yeah, so I think where I was at is I needed to become obsessed because I didn't have balance. So for me, like to sort of get into balance, I needed to obsess over the business and obviously my health. And I started really connecting those two as like literally I'd see like myself, I'd see how I push myself in the gym and my fitness. And then I saw the results on the back end of the business, and because it was very much derived through me at the time. Here we are. We've only been going for a year. We might have a team of 3 or 4, right? Like it's not a big team, so I was the main driver. So if I was on, the business was on, and I think like very fond in the sense of the transformation. Gained a lot of confidence from it. And then I started to see those results in the business, which gained momentum, and I got more and more confidence, and it built and built and built and built. And then after I actually failed day 73, I was like if I had, I don't know, a quarter of a liter, under, I was a fail, So I say, I read 7.
As in water you're talking about?
Yeah. Like, I was like the clinical, if you're not doing this exactly right, you're not doing the gaps between your workouts. If
Yeah.
I would literally go, like, if I wouldn't walk to the end of a 45-minute, it would be like, I have to flog myself, otherwise it doesn't count. Like, I was like serial pest.
I was the same way.
Yeah, but I think I had to be, and yeah, I read 7 pages and I fell asleep and failed myself. But I just kept continuing on, and interesting what you said about when you see yourself slip, right? So it definitely has created a base for me, in the ways of, this is how it is. I think there's like a natural evolution of 75 hard where you probably realize that it isn't as connected, especially when you start to build a bigger business and it's not as reliant on you. And there's different things, mentally that you need to become accustomed to. But ultimately, it's such a good base and thing to sort of, both reflect on, from where, where I was to where I've become, but also just, it's the confidence piece for me. Being able to know what I can achieve and be able to go back to that level is pretty powerful.
But besides from the confidence from going through 75 hard, what would you say are the 3 other principles and values that doing 75 hard has given you over the last 4.5 years in life?
Yeah, so accountability is accountability, self-discipline is probably another one. There's a leadership piece to that too, in the ways of building that culture. I think, I've got a no shit food policy in Kings of Neon. Like, I don't, sure, we can do it on the odd occasion, but like, I ain't buying anyone chocolate. So go buy your own fucking chocolate. Like, it's like shit like that. But yeah, and it's, oh man, it's lots of things, like, for me, it's like the biggest impact has probably been the stuff you don't see, which is like, as a dad, for my kids to see me go out each and every day, they're not fetching beers for me out of the fridge, and all that sort of stuff. I'm not going to the pub. I'm not like conversing. It's like working on myself, that they don't see me until, 7 a.m. in the morning when I get back from my workout. I'm sweating, whatever else. And just setting that example for them is probably the thing that I'm most proud of.
Yeah, man, I think you've hit the nail on the head with so many points. You hear oftentimes with parents are trying to instill a way of doing stuff that they're not preaching. And how old are your children?
So you've got 2, 10 and 7.
I mean, 10 and 7, that they're just at such an imperative, impressionable age whereby they go, like, you're their superhero and they're going to follow what you're doing. So if you're encouraging them to eat shit food and form bad habits, they're going to be like that. And I think you see that so often with kids, that they experience this trauma or a way of doing stuff when they're children, and they follow that through to their adolescence and adult years, which is so prevalent. So I guess, with your kids, are there any real non-negotiables that you've stuck on them? Do they have to train a certain amount of times a week? Do they have to have hobbies that they're religious with?
Yeah, look, I mean, I try not to be, like, I'm a big believer that if you tell people what to do, they'll eventually rebel if they don't actually want to do it. So my way of parenting is to kind of like educate and inspire, not to hold a standard. So hopefully when they get a little bit older, they'll remember all those things and they'll want to hold their own standard. And that's just like, for me, it was like, we never had lollies in the house. And so you could say, well, that's really good, right? Like, you never had lollies in the house. But we've always got lollies in the house now. But my kids don't go and devour it just because it's there. But fuck, if there was any, piece of sugar sniffing around outside wherever when I was growing up, I would find it crawl into a corner and devour it like nothing else. And then I took that through, to my adult, to my teens, and then through my 20s, and I didn't learn it. Like, I didn't learn the why behind it. So it was just a no. And so for me, I try not to put non-negotiables. I try and let them sort of partly dictate their own life, apart from, like sleeping and things like that. But it's like, hey, they've got an iPad there. It's like, maybe just jump off. Maybe just jump off it for a bit. Do something else. It's not like, hey, your 2-hour timer's up and you need to get off right now. It's just like in balance and try and find their own pathway with it.
Completely get you. I remember when we first connected on LinkedIn years ago, you had a really cool thread that I enjoyed reading. I believe it was called "What's in My Thoughts and in My Ears," and you talk about a podcast that you'd be listening to, and I believe that's when it's like 4 a.m. sessions or something like along those lines.
Yeah.
So, with everything that you adopted from there, so talking about that, got a few questions. What are the podcasts that you're listening to right now?
What was I? So this morning I didn't listen to one because I was working whilst gymming. I listened to a bit of Bartlett actually. The last one was Bartlett. The one before that was on property. So I'm a bit of a property nerd. So like anything I can learn on commercial and resi property, especially in Australia, I'll delve into. It just depends. Like sometimes when I need to sort of lock and load, I'll listen to Frizella again. Mm-hmm. But I find him quite like political now and a little bit harder to listen to. Bartlett, can get some amazing guests on. My very favorite podcast of all time was Bartlett with Branson, Virgin.
Okay, interesting. I'll put it on my list.
Yeah, it's my favorite of all time. It just hit different for me because...
How so?
Well, he's not educated. So I didn't go through... Like, I was, like, above average, but I didn't go through school and go to university and go to extracurriculum. I'm very much an effort-based person. And so... And I do things through people. I do things through delegating. And he's the master delegator. He inspires other people and then allows them to sort of build with him. And so that's very much how I take on business as well. So it was very inspiring for me to kind of hear a version or a similar version and how to sort of go about it. And obviously it works for him, right? So that was really good for me. But yeah, like it just depends. I'm quite diverse now. A little bit of business, a little bit of real estate, a little bit of self-development.
Chris Williamson, is he on the list?
No. Like I've listened to him a bit. It's probably I'm just in a different phase. Like I find him a little bit when he talks about like working out and working on his muscles and whichever else, he just loses me a bit. I respect it. I respect it completely. And he's got some very interesting podcasts. And I enjoy the ones that he sat with, with Bartlett and different things like that. But I'll typically relate to more business people when I'm listening to podcasts. So, he's obviously very good in business and very successful now, but probably comes from more of an influencer backing to build business versus a business to build business, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So, and then I know you're an avid reader. If someone for you was just starting out in business, what would be your top 3 business book recommendations for them?
See, for me, the start of business is more about the start of self-development and accountability. So I'd probably go to ones that open up your mind and challenge you a little bit more. I'm not good with names. I've got some of them back here. They just hit different at different times. I'll have to get back to you on that one. Let me peel that one out for you. But it's
So you go for the more self-development mindset-based books as opposed to pure business theory concepts.
For sure, because pure business just doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't talk business if you don't know business. Like you're just pretending, Whereas if you focus on yourself and maximize what your output can be, and think outside the realms of like reality, like the 5 a.m. club. I think it's the 5 a.m. club, like which is more of a story based, really easy read. That it's like oh shit, like I can wake up 2 hours and get more shit done, and it just sort of unlocks a different part of your brain, which is the version of my 4 a.m. sessions. I just realized that I couldn't get the shit done that I wanted to get done, and I couldn't then drive my kids to school. So I was like, all right, fuck it, I'll wake up an hour earlier. I'll wake up 2 hours earlier. Oh, all of a sudden I can get all this stuff done. I can go to the gym. I can read. I can, do a bit of Wim Hof. I can work on myself, just by waking up a little bit earlier. So, yeah.
I think to the point you made, and that I saw a thread where a guy asked, "Oh, can you give us insight to the automations that you use?" Or I'd like more of a tactical guide as to what you're doing in business. And the guy responded quite aggressively and just said, "I could give you all the tactics in the world, but you won't do shit with this because you haven't got your mindset dialed in. You haven't got these habits in check." And like I coach a few people right now, and I know pretty early on within the first 2-3 weeks as to who's going to be successful or not. But it's typically, and it's just such an easy, distinct difference to see. But it's when you give people tasks to do they do them or not? Do they procrastinate? Do they make excuses and say, "Oh yeah, man, but I've just been so busy with this." And it's like, well, your problems that you have right now are things that are stuck in your head. And once you learn to get past that, then you'll be able to be successful. But when you don't, you can be the smartest person in the world, all these theoretical concepts. You can know inside and out how to put an iPhone together. But if you don't actually start putting it together, you'll never truly know how to do it. And I really believe that it's not the strategies and tactics, the things that are in your head. It's actually what you actually implement and do in yourself. And that's the only difference for me between the successful and unsuccessful.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's your definition of success as well, right? Like, I mean, there is different versions of it for different people. And a great example is I've got a friend who used to be a professional runner, and he's got, I think, like $50 million business or whatever it may be right now. But he was wildly overweight, so it's like, he's successful. He's got a ton of cash, he's got 150 employees odd, but he wasn't successful on one end. So it's like, it's your definition of success. But for people starting out, it's like, it's just pushing what that is, and pushing that sort of status quo and move a step forward every time. And I just think by like challenging your thought process, like even what you're doing, right? By living in different countries, working in different countries, the biggest aspect to change and the easiest way to change is to change your environment, because we're dictated by the people and, the things around us. But like, I lived in Texas for a month and my days look completely different to what they do in Australia.
Whereabouts in Texas were you?
I was in Austin. So,
and what prompted the switch? Because I remember when you did that.
So the US was just like sort of ticking along, and it wasn't that exciting, and I just needed to give it a bit of a kick. And so I just thought, look, let's go spend a month over there. I brought one of my team over there that was running it as well, and then brought the rest of the team together, and just had full focus on the US business. Whereas when I'm here, I'm all the above. There might be 3 or 4 things going. Whereas like I'm on that time zone, I'm there. I can make calls myself. I can, sit with the team. I can look at those metrics day to day and see where it needs to get pushed. So that was the ride. And also I was thinking about moving there long term with the family. So I brought the whole family over to experience it, just to see what it'd be like.
So the month you spent there, how did that shape your thoughts of moving over to the US?
This is the version of my life at the moment. If I was single, or if it was just my wife and I, we would have moved 100%. From an innovation and everything that's going on there, especially in entrepreneurs and e-commerce, is 10 times faster, probably 50 times faster than especially where I'm from in Australia. However, I've got a young family, so the simplicities of of a home and things like that were missed. So it's obviously I needed to look at it and go, well, this is where I'm at in life, and accept where we're at, sort of thing, and work within the parameters of making everyone sort of happy. So not just me.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's it.
I want to fucking make heaps of cash. Let's fucking run. Let's blow this thing up and just bah, 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 bah. It's like, oh, nah, but yeah, kids will lose some friends and have to make some new ones. And it's hot as fuck here. And, yeah.
Makes sense. So just talking about the time when you spent that month in Texas, what would you say was the biggest impact you saw in the business and your growth in the US market?
Yeah, so I guess my role in the business is to push people's thought processes, like similar to what, I went through with 75 Hard, I do now with my team. And it's like, everyone has these bullshit ceilings. It's like, oh, I can only do this, or I can only do that, and I could only do this. So I just challenged all of their thought processes and brought them in together. And then I did it as well. So I think the US at the time was kind of sitting, in $20,000 to $50,000 months. It was just like, it was ticking. It was okay. We'd have some bigger months where we get some bigger deals, which was great. But it wasn't doing all that much. And then just by having that focus and getting everyone aligned, all of a sudden we started doing $250,000 months.
So it was definitely worth the return on investment and return on time.
Yeah, but all it was it wasn't like holding people's hands. It was just challenging the thought process of what could be done. And I think that aligns to, where I was talking about 75 Hard, or, when you look at new businesses or where you're currently at. Even as an example, we're hiring for a UK sales manager at the moment. And I met this guy yesterday, super smart. He went through university, studied law, and just hated it, and then went into ops, sales, and those sorts of things. But I could just tell on his face. I said, mate, you want something of your own, don't you? He goes, yeah, I think about it every single day. But he's just in such a bullshit comfort level that he won't ever push past it unless someone pushes him. And and I said, man, regardless of whether you end up working with us or you don't, fucking go for it. Like, because you'll be forever questioning your own belief system, and you'll be kind of happy and you'll be kind of making good money, and then you'll just be going for the next version of the same thing, but you'll be still saying to Jimmy, your boss, hey mate, I'm worth more than this, and then you'll change jobs again, and then all of a sudden you get tired, you get over it, and you'll justify your own bullshit, and you never have done anything. So I was like, man, just push it. And whether you want to be a good number two, and you can, possibly do that with us, and I'll give you the world to go and capture if you want to capture it, or you go and back yourself, earn shit money, and in the hope that you earn really good money, in a couple of years' time. So
that's it. And the thing is with business is there's no hope or guarantee that this will work out. It's kind of like an unpromised hope that you think, I'm going to put all of this time in, I'm going to just dedicate so much sweat to hopefully make it. And then very few do. And that is the reality of business. Or people make it work, and they make it work for maybe 3 years, and they just realize, you know what? You said, I become a great number two, or I go back into a company. There was a guy who I have really high estimations of. He ran his own startup, started another startup, sold that off. That kind of crashed because of COVID. And then he started another startup, built it up really quickly, sold it again. And he's just said to me, he's got a wife, they're looking to have kids within the next year. He was just like, you know what, I've just realised the stage that I'm at in life, I don't want the responsibility of running a business. I'm happy enough with the way how my life is. And he's like, maybe in 5-10 years time, things will change. But right now, he's pragmatic enough to understand the season, the chapter that he's in life, and says, this is what I want to optimize for. And for me, I don't want to beckon the stress of running a business, because I feel like with business at times, you've only got so many stripes, so many battle scars you can take before it's like, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. And this is the part of business that they kind of tell you, but they kind of don't, where it's like, there's really fun elements to it, but like, you know, you got to have broad shoulders and all this sort of stuff is real, man. Like, you know, shit goes down, it's on me. So, you know, my constant search is to find people that take responsibility and accountability. But if they haven't lived through that, or they're not, you know, willing to do that in some version of their life, then people want that certainty. But it's like, but then on the flip side, I'm like, well, I don't want you. Like, if you need certainty, then find somewhere else, because I don't have it for you. And it's funny, right? Like, because I've gone through different versions, you know, trying to find where the balance is in growing this business. And so initially it was like, you know, the number one was like, I need a version or versions of me, like, because we all had to run. Like, you couldn't go anywhere. Like, super obvious if you weren't running. And then I was like almost begging people to work with me, because I was like so small. I was like, oh, fucking take anyone. And then they weren't my people. So the culture diluted. And then, you know, then you get people back in and you start to run with them, but then you allow them to sort of dictate the culture for them, because you want to give them, you know, autonomy. And then that takes it in a different direction. And, you know, all of a sudden you're moving in all these directions. But ultimately what made us successful was that mentality, was like, go in, get it done, self-accountability. You know, there is no promises in life. So I'm going to go and, you know, build my own luck, make my own luck, you know, back myself and go for it. And again, like, I spoke to another guy, he's an older guy, and, you know, he goes, so what you're saying is in 6-8 weeks, if the results aren't there, then I might not have a job. And I was like, yeah, unapologetically, if you don't like back yourself in the first 8 weeks, there's a good chance that you're not going to back yourself in 6 months or 8 months or 9 months or, you know, 3 years. So why would I just stick to it? Because at the moment, at this point in life, and at this point in the business where we're at, you know, and to start up, you know, UK, because it is a newer market, we need someone that's willing to just go above and beyond.
So you're referring to the guy you spoke to yesterday?
Yeah. But it all relates, right? Like what you were saying, you know, 2 startups, how many stripes you got? Like, for me, I wouldn't go and take that role. I'm not going to be the UK sales manager. You know, I don't want to go and live and die by the sword. And you know, if I was in that position with 2 kids, mortgages, wife that didn't work, you know, live and die by the sword, 6-8 weeks, it's probably not where I'm at in life right now. But it's what the business needs right now in the UK market, you know, which is different to the US, which is different to the Australia. So it is really important to what you're saying, that you need to assess where you're at in life and what you're willing to achieve, or what you're willing to go through to get where you need to be. But then understand that things change.
I have always thought about a bit of if you think of like a supply and demand graph, is you've got time and you've got risk. And the longer you go along the time axis, which is at the bottom, the more risk you assume. So your risk, it might start here, just above the line. But as you get older, the risk is there. So it's like, well, if I risk it now, the equilibrium point of where I need to get to is far higher. Whereas I quit my job at 24 years old. I was living with my parents. I had to pay a bit of rent, but not as much as I would have had to pay if I was privately renting in London. And I really thought to myself, it's like I either do it now and I fail, but I'm going to fail and I get tons of lessons. And then I go back to this job in a year, 2 years time, and then I can start. But then where I think a lot of people struggle with this is they see these doors as dead end doors. They don't see them as revolving doors that they can come back in. And I think and actually it kind of comes back to, I don't know if you've heard Matthew McConaughey mentioned this, but he said, don't half-ass it. He said, whatever you go into, just make sure you give it your all. Don't do it. And it's like with this guy, if you can feel the trepidation in his voice, he isn't fully invested in this role. And he's saying, but what if he's saying to you, what if it doesn't work out in 6 to 8 weeks? He's pretty much already foreshadowed his destiny. It probably will not work out. Whereas if you've got, I'm just going to use a general example, but if you've got a young, hungry 25-year-old lad who's just thinking, give me this, I'm wet behind the ears, I'm green, I just want this exposure. And again, I think to your point about entrepreneurship, you can give all of these people the best business books there, but fundamentally, it comes down to mindset.
Yeah. And it's a balance of, the hard thing with the 25-year-old is they don't have EQ. So like, and it's this balance, right? It's like, the 25-year-old hasn't gone through, necessarily through marriage or kids or, owning their own house or, the stresses of life or whatever. So the hard thing is they actually don't know what hard work is. Most of them. Like, and so it's like this balance, right? In finding that. And that's why, I don't dictate age, but it's like, if I can find the right 20-year-old with EQ, it's gold.
So how do you, as the founder of a startup, how do you get people, how do you convey the vision of the brand and business to new hires?
So, actually, which you spoke about as well, like I went on Shark Tank, so your Dragon.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah. So weirdly enough, that's helped me so much in hiring.
Okay, how?
Well, it's like, it just brings a legitimacy to the, and possibly the way I pitched as well. Like I pitched as an established business, but like, it's almost like everyone kind of secretly would like to go on that show one day. So there's like a level of, irregardless of what happens on there, there's a level of like respect almost. Mm-hmm. Like
notoriety, clout, status.
Yeah. So interesting, most of the guys that, I'm interviewing, they've seen my Shark Tank episode and they're like, oh, I love it. So it's like, if you can get out, in the world or do podcasts or go on TV shows or, do a bit of PR, I think it only helps from that angle. But ultimately, I'm just as brutally honest as humanly possible. So I'm starting these interviews out. I'm like, cool, this is open, honest. Like, we're just going to chat. It's not like, I don't need to work out what your skill set is. But for one, like, we're on different levels of, different time zones, completely different time zones. So if I don't trust you and you don't trust me, it's never going to work. So we might as well be as real as possible to begin with. And then I just lay it out. I go, look, this is a job where you're either going to fucking love it and it's going to be the best place in the world, or you're going to passionately dislike it, and then you're going to fucking hate me and you're going to want to stab me in the throat. And there's no middle ground. It's either one way or the other. And
like Marmite or Vegemite for you.
Hey?
I said it's like Marmite or Vegemite for you.
Yeah. It's like, it's one or the other. There's not like, get a little bit of column A and column B. It's just like, it's one or the other. And it's like, it's that culture. It's like, well, if you're willing to apply yourself, let's run. Let's do some cool shit. Let's open some doors. Let's go through them. Let's barge through them, But just as an FYI, everyone that I'm interviewing right now has the ability to be really successful. So if you're not successful, you're not applying yourself, and I'll call you out. And people don't like getting called out. So if you don't like getting called out and you're not willing to change and adapt, then it's just going to end up really shit, and I'm going to fucking hang on your back until you leave. And it's like, like I either hang on your back and you change and you adapt and you grow, or, hang on your back and you end up really disliking me, and, I either, cut it or you cut it.
I suppose for startups, because I've experienced it myself, and these are lessons, and it's the classic idiom of hire slow, fire fast, that as business owners, as you said, if it's not working in 6 to 8 weeks, it probably will not work in 6-8 months time. And I remember it was quite brutal, but I had to let go of a girl on her second day, and it just and this is how short it was. It was, called her up. She jumped on our team call. Called her up afterwards, just like, hey, like, and this is where it started. So I called her up and said, hey, how you doing? She's like, I'm fine. I was like, right, okay. This is going to be a very big struggle. It's like, hey, like, any questions? No. Right, okay, cool. And then, anyways, first day there was that. I was like, I don't know, maybe I've done something wrong. Second day there, and I was like, it's not going to work. If I cannot see this working, and then I tried to take this quote from and reference from Neville Ravikant, but he says, if you won't do business with someone for the rest of your life, don't do business with them for a day.
Yeah.
And I think it's so true. And I just thought, it's like, I can't. And I remember my partner at the time, she went ballistic. She was like, can't do that. That's awful. You talk about culture and all of this shit. I was like, sorry, but I'm wasting time. I'm wasting money, resource. It just doesn't make sense. I've got someone who I know there's no alignment with our business.
Yeah.
And she tried to come to me and say, hey, like, I think I was in the Gelded. I was like, I'm sorry, but this is probation. You can work for the next 2 weeks and that's it. Like, whatever the terms were. And there we were. But it just, if I know it's not going to work and it's very obvious from the get-go, you might be the most competent person in the world, but if we can't communicate as a team, well, we're not going to be a team.
No. And it's good for both parties too, funnily enough. Like, I mean, typically a lot of people, like you said, will see it from the employee standpoint, because a lot of people are employees. There's more employees in the world than there are employers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like 95 to 1. Or like
Yeah.
95 to 5.
Yeah. It's like everyone high-fiving when there's a public holiday in front of me. Like, fuck you, motherfuckers. I'm still paying you to do absolutely nothing. So you can high-five behind me. High-five behind me, but don't fucking high-five in front of me, because it's not a fun day for me. It's not a fun day.
Like payday as well. So, my favourite day of the week, of the month, is always payday on Friday. And you're like, fuck, I'm paying like this.
Yeah, it's like the people that try and work out, like, oh, if I take 3 days off there, I can have 7 days off in a row. I was like, oh, cool. So you're pretty much telling me that you're not the right person to my face. Thank you. Fuck off. But oh man, it's just like, it's a funny game. It's just a funny game. I think the big thing that I've realized probably in the last year is people try and like do the deal today that they want for the rest of their life.
How so?
Well, it's like I don't know. Let's say hypothetically, you project your life as you want a house, a £2 million house with a Ferrari out the front and whatever else, right? And so you're like, fuck, like I'm not going to get that house and that Ferrari unless I'm earning this, and then I can progress into this, and then I can do this, and then I'm going to get this, and I'm going to get this. So they're almost like going into these conversations and going, well, what can I do? Like, what can I have? And so, especially youth, they're overstretching on the wage. So they're ending up going into probably a lot worse situations by going into larger corporations all the time. And then they don't develop because what's happening is they're overreaching. So they're going, say if they're in sales, they're going for a sales manager role and they're trying to jump. Then they'll go into a sales manager role. They'll fucking squabble a little bit. They'll be really terrible at the job, or at least for a period of time. But because of the systems and the structures, they have to go through the 5-step process to get them and train them and move them through. So then you spend 2 years, you hate your job, but you're with Apple, and you're earning, £100,000 instead of, 55. And so you're like, cool, let me just go through it because this is a better journey to my, big £2 million house and Ferrari, right? Instead of kind of going, you know what, let's sort of step back a second, align myself with someone that I align with long term, go into business, something I want to be in business with, forever. And then the period of growth that you can go through with the right environment and, somewhere where growth is, I guess, celebrated more so than a larger corporation.
Exponential as well.
Yeah, you can take 5 steps, when you go into a larger corporation where you take, a half a step. I think about the 8 years that I spent in a jewelry chain, and it felt like I was going fast, but they're like, oh no, you got to finish this module and do this, and then make sure that person likes you, and then do this and do this and do this. Whereas if you go into a high growth startup and you're willing to take a little bit of a pay cut, you can ride that wave. Some of the guys here with me have doubled their wage in the space of 12, 18 months just by backing themselves initially. And then they go, well, based on my performance. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. I'll give you what you need. And then all of a sudden they've got, that projection, and they can see where they need to go, but they're not willing to back themselves to begin with to get the results they need. So I think there's like I just find it really funny. They're like, oh, I want this, and then, I want my 6 weeks off a year, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And it's like, well, what are you willing to do?
I think you've said so many good things there, but where I think a lot of people fail to recognize successful business or just negotiation is, and I always try to do this, is if you and I were to go into, let's say I was coming to pitch you marketing services, I'm not going to come in and say, okay, I want to charge this price and, well, this is what I think I'm worth. I'm going to be thinking, for me, what can build the most trust quickest with this business? And then further down the line, it's kind of like you're getting buy-in initially, and then you can turn around to people and say, hey, look, we've done so and so. I've seen this other opportunity and this other gap within your business. Would you trust me with this next element and this next element? And when I look at all of my best clients, we have started small, and it's kind of I think Leonardo DiCaprio mentions it in Wolf of Wall Street. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's like, but believe me, John, the only problem that you're going to have is where you didn't buy more is like start small and then grow as time goes on. Whereas, I had a guy message me today trying to pitch me YouTube services, and I was like, hey, just tell me more. Straight away he goes into, he's like, here's the price, and this is what we do, and if you need this, we'll do this. I was like, are you actually kidding me? You've come in with the price, giving me no context of the value you can provide. It's like, well, I thought I'd just get to the point. I was like, man, you haven't told me any way how you can help me. You haven't led with any value. And I think amongst younger generations, that's the big problem. They feel like they're deserving of this level that they should be at when they've done jack shit. They haven't proven anything. And I think this is where so many people go wrong. And I think you and I are very aligned with this. But when I'm looking to bring people in to my company, I'm thinking of, and I've learned this through experience now, but I will drip feed people small tasks, seeing where they lie. And I've got a guy now, shout him out, John, who's been part of my team for the last year. He started at like the equivalent of sweeping the floors, let's just say in like the online marketing world. Now he's got so much responsibility, autonomy, because he's proven it. He's shown me what he's done.
Sure.
It's undeniable. He is such a valuable asset to my team now that I cannot say, well, no, man, you don't deserve this, but he's worked his way up. So just kind of arcing over to business and growth and grappling with growth, as this podcast suggests. Can you kind of delve into a time in the last, say, 5-6 years of business where you've kind of been backs against the wall, where you're like, shall I be running this? Am I insane? Have you got a moment there?
Yeah, every couple of weeks.
What one springs to mind the most? What's a moment where you're like, fuck this?
It's probably easier to tell a more recent story. So I've got another business. It's called Designer. It's designer.ai. So it's an AI-based like quoting tool for the signage industry, in essence, and like it's solving my own problem. So this journey, I went into it, and I got a quote from a developer that was $60,000, and he's like, "Look, I'll build it out. It might cost a bit more, but we'll take that on because we're new in business, but we believe we can build this out." I was like, "Cool." let's go. The dude ended up being a crook, and like literally took my money, disappeared off the face of the earth, like literally the face of the earth. I believe you went overseas, and
Where did you find them?
so it was actually at like it's called AFR in Australia, which is the top fastest growing companies. So I was at an event for the top 20 fastest growing companies in Australia, which is a big publication, AFR, Australian Financial Review. And I met him at this particular event. So it seems like really quite legit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
It's
he
not
was a
like
tag.
Upwork or somewhere.
Yeah, he's a tag along to a tag along. So shout out if you're listening to it. We'll come find you one day, brother. But but you know, and then so I went to the next version, which again, like, you know, initial was meant to be somewhere in the range of 90 to 120,000. I was like, wow, like I'm going to be in 200 grand here. I've got someone else running it, so I have to pay their cost too. But I'm like, you know what? I can see the value. Long story short, I'm still on that journey, and I'm probably about $700,000 in to developing this particular product.
Okay.
And it's apparently a very similar conversation with the development world. Is like, you don't know what you don't know, and you know, if you're building something innovative and new, then expect that, you know, it's going to be costly. But it just like it just hits you at different moments, especially from a financial point of view. The stresses of holding that sort of burden and financial burden. We've obviously got, you know, elements of success within Kings of Neon, and we're a profitable business there. But to have another one that just like rips you apart, like I just got to the point, fucking started crying, I fucking broke down. I spoke to the guy that was running it, and I was like, "Fuck this! Like, why the fuck am I doing all this when it brings me so much pressure?" So much anxiety, so much like all these sorts of things, right? And it takes away from who I want to be as a person and what I want to achieve and all the rest of it, right? Like, is this worth it, kind of thing? And versions of this, like I said, happen every 2 weeks, you know, especially when you're trying to innovate and grow and you're always sort of pushing that barrier to the next layer of growth, you know, and then, you know, so I was just done, like completely done. You know, another version is, you know, people is like, you know, you'll have someone that you go all in for and you fully trust. And then, you know, we had one guy, which was one of our sales managers, just disappear for a week and not tell us. And it's like, you know, when you invest so much in people and there's a flow-on effect of how that goes on, and that means other people's jobs are in jeopardy because you're not willing to be accountable on yourself. And then you're like, fuck, man, like people let me down, people let me down, people let me down, people let me down, but they expect a lot from me. They're like, well, what's in it for me? Like everyone's like, what's in it for me? And then they let them down. And one of my main guys was like, you almost have to be Jesus when you're the business owner. He goes, you have to be Jesus. You have to like go, I hear you, I respect you, and I forgive you. And you don't budge, you know, to a certain degree, because like you just get punched all the time, and you question why. But then, you know, a week later you get over it and there's something fun, and then you move through it. But man, there's been heaps of times that I've been like stuck in a corner, you know, stuck in a shower, you know, I have to drive away for a couple of hours, just like completely crippled by the stresses of business. So.
And I mean, I commend you and I respect you for that. And you're a seasoned business owner, as most out there, a lot. Do you find you have a certain outlet, exercise, meditation, that is your de facto, your go-to to help you when you're in these challenges within business, when you're in these stressful situations?
It normally comes down to structure. So the further away that I go from structure, the more stressed I get in life.
Okay,
So,
can you expand?
So like, you know, it is typically, you know, that 4 a.m. session. So the best version of my structure is to wake up at 4 a.m., read, journal, breath work, some sort of exercise, come back, you know, cold infusion, cold shower or something like that, it kind of like, it makes, as Frizella said, you win the day.
Yep, agreed.
Regardless of what the fuck happens, I've won the day. I've done something.
Eat the frog, that's it.
Yeah. So that's the best version of my structure, where I get wins throughout the day. And there is an evolution of that structure that I haven't figured out yet. Because I listen to people like Mosey, right? Well, Mosey's a fit dude. He doesn't have to wake up at 4 a.m. He's just got better discipline with his time, and structures and systems. So I don't think you need to wake up at 4 a.m. It's just that I'm not disciplined or structured enough to obviously hold myself accountable to make sure I get those wins through the day. And so I spiral. So the quicker I can get myself back to a version of a structure, the better I feel.
Well, that's it. And I think when I've looked at the best seasons in my life, it's when I've got the routine. It's you asked me, you're in Colombia now. How is it? Is it as glamorous as people make it out to be? What are you doing with your time? But I rented it was the best Airbnb for me. It was a studio where I had the bed, I had a sofa where I could shoot content, I had a desk, and I was so happy. I had everything I needed. And for me, that's perfect. It's going away, having that structure. I can wake up, I've got coffee shops literally 100 meters down the road. I can get food, I can just lock in. And those are the best seasons I've seen in my business. And I really think, you mentioned changing your environment, but I really talk about the concepts of you have to engineer your environment for your success. You need to set things up for you. If you need a water bottle right next to you, so that you don't have to go up every 20 minutes to pick up a glass of water. That's just a very basic example, but it's having these small things just in reaching distance. Okay, when this goes wrong, this gets sorted. It's similar to within your business. You've got your accounts team, you've got your marketing team, your sales team. There's structure there, but I feel seldom do entrepreneurs have this set up in that way for themselves on a day-to-day basis, and then they become burnt out, they become overwhelmed, and they just take on shit that they don't want to take on. So just talking about design AI, is that project you're still working in, or have you said, you know what, even though there's a sunk cost, I'm done with it?
Nah, the opportunity cost is too large. So it's obviously it's tech, right? So if it's going to solve a lot of my problems in the business, so it does serve Kings of Neon. So there is a return on investment, irregardless there.
Okay.
But secondary to that, it actually should solve all of my competitors' problems. It should solve a lot of signage companies' problems, and so it's got great upside. So it's just stick with the dance.
So
stick with the dance and balance it, man. Essentially,
in an ideal world, when will the product be ready?
9 weeks ago.
9 weeks ago. Okay, cool. So 9 weeks time.
For the last 18 months, we've been launching in 3 weeks for the last 18 months.
Shit. Okay. So hopefully by 2026.
Yeah. So I'm very reluctant to say that we'll be launched in 3 weeks, because the argument is we'll be launched in 3 weeks right now. And there is a version of it, that's somewhat live at the moment, but just development world, it's because it's serving my business, I'm looking for a version of perfection, or at least like a large level up, because I know, especially in tech world, really any world, like product is what actually makes you successful. It's like, even as a marketing company, if you can create a product that can talk for itself, it's so much easier. There's a guy here in Australia, he ran a marketing company, he flipped it on its head, and now the dude's worth 200 mil.
What's his name?
Jay Wright.
Okay, I've never heard of him. So
it's called E-commerce Equation. The dude's built, I don't know, $200 million business off Australians.
How did he flip the business? What exactly did he do?
Community. So he just coached everyone instead of did everything for them. So then, people paid to be part of the community, got really good people part of the community, and then people just want to be part of the community for being part of the community. So they pay him a shitload of money to be part of the community, and he then, just has to focus on getting the best content out for that community. And then ultimately it just keeps growing organically because people are like, holy shit, this is the best thing. So, he can, it's leveraging time. Business is leveraging time. So, if you've got a product that leverages time, then it's all good. Or a product that saves time, it's valuable, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm very bullish on the product. The further I go into business, it's very easy to get into the service based, very hard to create, a product that has longevity. So, yeah.
Fully, man. And a lot of it does come down to adoption. If it's a product that can be adopted widely by adjacent horizontal markets, then you've got something there. So I'm curious, besides that, what's next for Kings of Neon? What are you most excited about in 2025?
Yeah, we spent the last year sort of building out systems and structures so that we could grow further. So I think we're very aligned on who we need and where we need them and what job they need to do. So I'm excited for the growth in the UK market. I think that'll go pretty strong. The US is a bit of a boomer, and they've obviously got some positive outlooks in the ways of their economy there. Then we're looking at new countries as well to sort of bring our offering in, because we know it's the best offering in our medium in the LED neon market. So the customers want it. So it's just setting it up over the next 6 months and then driving it home in the money months at the end of the year.
And personally, you mentioned you've got triathlon. What's kind of the training plan for that? What's the goals for that?
Yeah, so as I was explaining to you, it isn't as going as
Is this your first triathlon?
It is my first triathlon. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. So the run and the bike, I'm not super worried about, because I can bang out a 10-kilometer run or 20-kilometer run. It's not super difficult. Riding is riding for me. It's not super difficult. But the swim element is where I'm outside of my comfort zone. So
I think that's the thing that gets most people, to be fair. I know a friend he's actually in Australia, and he did one. He was like, I was like, mate, you still finished the triathlon. Don't discredit yourself. But he finished in the bottom 10%, and he's like, I'm just so bad at swimming. I was like, you did a triathlon, that's fine. It's you versus you at the end of the day.
Yeah. So look, it's I've got all of a month now, I think, which is
you've only got a month to train.
Yeah, I've got a month to go. So yeah, look, I'm banging out, like I'm exercising daily, but it's getting a lot more specific over the next 3 weeks, especially in the pool, is going to be the challenge there. So.
Fair enough. Well, let me leave you to go swimming now, so you can can get that session in. But man, look, it was a pleasure having you on. It's been great to watch your journey, your growth, just the resilience that you show, and I look forward to watching more of your content on LinkedIn, among other platforms.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, Joe. Enjoyed it, and looking forward to staying connected.
Top man, cheers.
Thanks, mate.